Well, let's try this again. I just had a failed live stream attempt. So, can you hear me this time? If you can hear me, see me, just put a little something there in the live chat to let me know. You can see and hear what's going on. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Give me a yay or nay there, if you would, please. Anyone? All good? All right. I apologize. I'm going to blame it on moving because when you move and you're still working out the kinks, I'm not using my regular setup here, and so sometimes the equipment doesn't play well together, and my audio interface is struggling just a bit this morning, but all good. Hey, thanks for being here. So, if you were to ask me where I learned how to build a successful multiple six-figure voiceover business, I would tell you I learned it in the school of hard knocks. Now, back when I got started in 2006, like many, maybe even most of you, I did what everybody would do. I went to Google, I went on the internet. I started looking around and I started searching. Now, back then there wasn't 1,001 voiceover coaches. There were a handful of coaches out there. And certainly some talented people who had had some success in the past, and some even were doing some current jobs in voiceover. And from some of those folks, I learned some pretty valuable stuff to do behind a microphone, some performance stuff. However, when it came to actually building, getting clients, and building a business, I didn't learn much of anything. And that's when I had to when I came to the great realization, the great aha moment that voiceover is a business. And that was my background. I've been a former business consultant, a marketing consultant. I knew how to do that. And so when you what the problem with working with performers is often the performers have no oftentimes just don't understand or have business sense and ignore that and think you can simply be good enough. If you're good enough talent-wise, you'll be successful. And there are thousands upon thousands of voice talent who have gone through the gauntlet who would say that that's not the way this works. So unfortunately, going back to my original statement, the school of hard knocks is how I had to learn most of what I learned in voiceover, which, by the way, is not necessarily a bad thing because it's much like, if you're a toddler and you're wandering around the house and you're just touching and working, trying to move things and open things and close things. If you touch a hot stove, you're going to learn real fast. You don't want to go near that again. So the lessons that you learn from the school of hard knocks tend to be things that stay with you. And one of the things that I learned early on that I want to share specifically, I guess the general theme is, uh, there's a lot more to voiceover than just performance. And it is okay. It's okay to make mistakes because that's I built my entire voiceover career on making mistakes and then fixing them. But one of the earlier mistakes I made was I recorded a project. It was for a hospital in New York City. It was a narration for a procedure that was being done, and I was recording the narration for it. It was hard. It was my first truly medical narration that was just packed full of terminology that I had no clue. I had to do a ton of research, and it took me a long time to do it, but I got it done, and they were pleased, and I was very happy with it. Well, fast forward, it was maybe 3 years later, they came back to me, and they needed a pickup. They had an edit, a slight change. I guess they had updated the procedure or something, and they needed some new lines put in, and so they wanted a new edited version of it. Well, guess what? You'll never guess what I had not done. Yeah, I hadn't saved the audio. There's a lot of when you look back, and you would think, "Bill, how could you not know to do that?" I don't know, but I didn't. There are a number of things that I didn't do properly when I first got started. And so what did I do? Well, instead of saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I don't have your project anymore," I went back and I re-recorded that beast of a project from scratch. And that was a hard lesson learned, but I learned and I never did it again. There are so many things that are only learned when you put your hands into you got to get dirty. You got to get your hands dirty. And some of you guys are trying so hard to avoid making mistakes, not understanding that that's the way you're going to learn and the way you're going to get good. So, a couple of things here. Number one, you need the full scope of information. Voiceover is a business. There is the front end, there's the performance, there's the marketing, there's the operational side, and I wasn't so hot at that when I first got started. It took a lot of work and help to get that operating as well. So there's the operational, there's the technical, there's the performance, and there's the marketing. And unless you understand and are doing all of those things correctly, it's going to be a very difficult thing for you to do in terms of building a business. But if you know those things and understand those things, it becomes so much easier. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say pretty much anybody can do it because it's not a complicated business. It's a simple business, but you have to understand those things. And so, anyhow, that's why I get together with you guys in the morning. And the specific, I guess, thing this morning is, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Number one. Number two, save your audio files, for goodness sakes. Don't do what I did. Save all that stuff. And if you feel like you need help and you're not sure about how to put all of those elements together to make this work, look below in the description. I've got links to my voiceover training resources. That's what I do. I help people like you become successful and profitable in recording voiceovers. So let's take a look. Let me put on my readers since I'm working off my 13.5-inch notebook screen here, and let's see what the comments are. Hey, Tess in Tequila, Georgia. How are you doing? Hey, Chris. Good morning, Merrill. Glad you can see and hear. Rob, thank you. Appreciate it. Yes. Oh, man, guys, so embarrassing. To be specific, what happened was as I was getting ready to go live, everything showed like it was working well. And then I put my headphones on and I realized that even though I use a universal audio interface, for some reason it wasn't working properly. It wasn't actually sending audio through. So no problem. I just turned off my interface and I turned it back on and I had audio. It was working. The problem was that it was not interfacing with YouTube. Once I turned off the interface and turned it back on, it would not reconnect with YouTube. So I had to reboot. So that might be more than you want or care to hear, but stuff happens and live and learn. And, when it comes to technology, that's one thing you can't be afraid to make mistakes with technology. The way I learned computers was through, when I was younger, I would just fool around with computers. I would get to the place where I'd have to reformat. I'd have it so screwed up, I have to reformat the hard drive. But I loved it because in the earlier days of DOS, I learned all the DOS commands. I wasn't not programming, but DOS, for those of you, disk operating system, pre-Windows, for those of you who remember. I loved learning all those commands and had it to navigate a hard drive and then, all the stuff that went along with it as computers continued to evolve. So again, point being, make it a game, make it fun, get your hands in there, get dirty, learn, make mistakes. It's the only way you get from here to there. Russ, good morning. Greg in Asheville, what's going on? John, good to see you on the stream this morning. Janet, hello in Florida. Scotty, how's it going? The School of Hard Knocks, indeed, yes. MG, what's going on in North Carolina? Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be back as well. Wally says your sound is good. Thank you. Bill in Boise. We've got Barb in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Wayne in the Olympic Mountains. John, good morning from muggy Fort Wayne, Indiana. Ty, how are you doing in Warsaw, Indiana? Sandra, Dallas, Fort Worth. Let's see here. It's a beautiful sunny day in Texas. Hey, Marie. Casey, how are you doing? The Flowery Branch of Georgia. Hope your movement went well. It did, thank you. Still unpacking boxes. You know how it is when you move. Unless you're so far removed from it, you forgot. But, we're just surrounded by boxes. We downsized. It's a smaller house than we had before. But all our stuff came with us, of course. And so it's just boxes piled. And one by one, we're working our way through. Some things we may never find. I don't know. I've just kind of resigned myself to whatever happens, happens. Hey, Casey, happy hump day to you. Eric, thank you for the kind comments. Aaron, yes, take two in Columbia, Missouri. Maria in New York. Hey, Bob, how are you doing in Clearwater? Well, thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate that. JR in Austin, Texas. Wade in Philadelphia. Rob says the knocks are worth it. The blueprint has been very important, worth the tuition dollars. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. Hey, Marcus, good morning to you in Springfield. Glad to see you back up and running. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the kind comments there. I appreciate that. He says there's a lesson in itself just in that. Bradford, sometimes I feel like my entire life is a lesson, you know? I think the more you're willing to screw up and make mistakes, the more you learn. So hopefully, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do it. Even when you embarrass yourself, like I just did this morning. We've got Bradford in Simpsonville, South Carolina. Steve in Stansted, UK. Hey, Steve. Guy in St. Louis. Maria says, love your videos. Getting ready to start my VO career. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Colleen, good morning in Vermont. From London, medical narrations, ARG. It's funny because that first narration, I mean, it kicked my butt. It was so very, very hard to do. But what's funny now is that a big percentage of the work that I do is medical related, pharmaceutical primarily, but I do a lot of other stuff as well. So it's funny the things that are the bane of your existence, as you become more exposed to it and you do it, it can become your bread and butter. Greg in Winnipeg. Theo, chuck up one more to the school of hard knocks. Boy, ain't that the truth. Yeah, the hard audio knocks. By the way, speaking of the school of hard audio knocks, my son Alex, he went to he's a graduate of the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences in Phoenix. That's the path he took. Me, of course, I took the path of hard knocks and self-trained and learned, and just with hours, hundreds if not thousands of hours of experience of tweaking and tuning and experimenting, but because not doing it out of frustration, but doing it because I love it. That's what I love to do. Love to learn like that. Wally says, thank you for illuminating the way and helping us grow through this faster. Thank you, Wally. Meryl says, always great to start the morning with my VO peeps. Hey, Meryl. Austin, Texas in the house. Colleen. Yeah, Colleen, to find out more about the VoiceOver Blueprint, I am taking in some new students right now. You can just go check the links below. You'll get all the info. Would love to have you find out more and see if you're a good fit for that. Laura says, exactamundo, mistakes get a bad rap, from St. Paul, Minnesota. That's the truth. It is the truth. We spend so much of our energy trying to avoid the very thing that will get us to where we want to go. When you think about it, it's kind of crazy, right? Think about that. We spend countless hours of energy, psychic, emotional energy, trying to avoid the very thing that's going to take us to where we want to go. I appreciate your advice on making mistakes. I typically get hard on myself when making mistakes. Yeah, and I think that's the human response. It's certainly natural, but I think we just have to reframe it and say, okay, what did I learn? And it doesn't mean you won't make the mistake again, but it probably means you won't make it very many more times. You'll get it. Dan says, amen. O'Malley, good morning from Tucson. Tom lurking in Indianapolis. Jim in Lincoln, Nebraska. Megan in rainy Manitoba. Bob says hello from Reidsville, North Carolina. Dan, yeah, my life, he says, one big lesson. Oh my gosh. David, good morning from Canal, Winchester, Ohio. Good to open the day with a positive note. Thank you. And thank you for being here, David. Hey guys, thanks again. Appreciate you being here. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Don't be afraid to make those mistakes. Save your audio files. Save your audio files. It could save you a lot of heartache down the road. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.